before. That was kind of the way his defenses went. But I always said, man, that guy'd make a hell of a head coach because he can give a speech and he can give a press conference like nobody the Browns have had since they came back. But obviously that didn't work out, well. I've never been a Ryan fan.
He's gotten himself into trouble a few times with some of those impassioned speeches, like
Absolutely.
talking about the Jets going to the Super Bowl and things like that. So yeah, we've seen a little bit of that from him, but
from both of them, from the whole family.
And those blitzes, much like the one that burned him yesterday with 15 seconds on the clock and left Andrew Hawkins wide open down the field, is just another example of what you're talking about.
That's it.
He sent 7 guys after the quarterback, and he left a wide receiver 30 yards down the field with nobody within 10 yards of him.
Hoyer said we called the same play back-to-back because the first one we couldn't believe it was that wide open. We said, hell, let's just do it again and see if they and sure enough, they sent the exact – he said, I looked at the line and saw the same everything. I said, man, they're going to do the same thing and he's going to be open. All I got to do is make sure that I float him the ball and that he can catch it. And everything went in slow motion, like as Hawk is dropping down and trying to make sure that he nestles that ball in. JK texted me and goes, could you imagine if he had dropped it, because that's such traditionally, and I said, bro, he might as well never show his face again, man.
I was just going to say the only thing more Browns like than losing the game on a missed extra point would have been if Hawkins, and I was definitely afraid this was going to happen. He's down on the ground, no one's touching him.
He got back up
to his knees, and he's scrambling. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to try to go for the end zone. He's not.
And get tackled at the one.
More Browns
when he got up, I said the
more
same
Browns
thing.
Than losing it by an extra point.
I said the same thing. I'm like, no, quick, come on, call the timeout, man. No, you don't have enough space to get to the end zone. Let's just get this thing over with. Hey, one last thing about the Browns before we talk a little Buckeyes. If he completes, if he just simply doesn't throw an interception in his first 12 passes of the next game, Brian Hoyer will become the 4th longest streak of Browns history. I mean, this speaks more to the depths of the quarterbacks since 1999. There will only be 3 quarterbacks in Browns history who have gone longer without an interception. It speaks more to that than it does to the credit of Hoyer. But it's Vinny Testaverde in '95, it's Milt Plum in 1960, and Bernie Kosar with the record that he set in the 90-91 season. But I find that just speaks more to what we haven't had for so long. When you look at the next closest guy would be Vinny back in 1995, a full season before the Browns even announced they were moving.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there were 2 balls yesterday that it was just Lady Luck smiling on Brian Hoyer that didn't get him picked off. One was a ball he floated down towards Barnage in the left corner of the end zone by the pylon, and that was a duck that with any kind of awareness by their little sideline throw that a linebacker almost got a hand on. That was a very risky throw to make. So he's been living right, and more power to him. I hope he climbs that ladder and keeps on going another 3 games. But he's been yesterday at least a couple times. I thought he was living a charmed existence, not getting one picked off.
Oh, I agree with you. That one to Barnage was the one that I remembered, but I think there was a second one that I'm not recalling that you're probably motioning to. But that one to Barnage, I'm like, bro, you don't take that chance, man. Come on, man. There's 3 of them there in the other jersey, man. Luckily, Barnage was able to play a little defensive back there at the end of that play. He actually pushed one guy away just to make sure that nobody got their hands on that one. I said, good job down there, man. Make sure if you don't get it, nobody else does either there. But I'm telling you, going to be
he's been Barnage has been a nice surprise, hasn't he? I mean,
he's not a surprise to me.
The short hands. Early in the game on a 3rd and 12, he made a really nice catch above his head for a first down, and then the big 4th down catch. Obviously, they didn't get any bigger than that. He's proven to be pretty reliable, and he's known as a good blocker. And I wasn't concentrating on that watching him, but the only thing, and I'll say one thing about maybe the downside of the game yesterday. You mentioned the run defense wasn't up to snuff, and I thought for the first three quarters that Phil Taylor and Ataba Rubin were just getting mauled off the ball, and our outside run defense with guys like Kirksey were losing contain on the edge too, and
the misdirections.
All that stuff kind of something that bothered me a little. Kirksey's got the excuse of being a rookie, but where Taylor and Rubin were kind of invisible into that early.
Both weeks have been slicing that up because this is 2 weeks of Phil's other teams are looking, so you can bet that they're going to be trying to get actions. You know what I mean? You can see that being going forward this season, so they're going to need. This defense is showing me a lot of the things that are trademarks of the Mike Pettin, which is his defenses traditionally have been. They've been able to get sacks. They've been able to get turnovers. They've been able to be game effectors as far as being able to make plays. But the one place, the Buffalo last year, one place that his defenses have been traditionally weaker or attacked is in the run game. And that's something that we're seeing an early trend here. Looks very similar to his defense that he put together there in Buffalo.
Yeah, the other thing was getting after the quarterback. I thought, although they did a good job early, and Kruger had the one big sack, and they knocked Breeze around a little bit. For the middle half of that game, they really weren't getting much pressure on him. I think
none.
I wondered why Armani Bryant wasn't playing more. They certainly, it seemed, missed Mingo's athleticism coming from the outside, rushing the passer. So those two things were noticeable, especially when they went quite a long stretch there where they weren't getting any heat at all on Breeze. And I wondered where is the vaunted Mike Pettin? He was being fairly vanilla and trying to get there with his linemen, and he was sometimes running with only three linemen. So that was a concern to me, especially as Breeze was having 4 and 5 seconds to find out where number 80 was.
Well, yeah, that whole literally from the middle of the second quarter till around the end of the fourth quarter, they had that stretch where we just were not getting pressure at him. And whether you want to call that the wearing down during the game, but I think that is what surprised me so much on the third down when Dansby got the sack, because it came out of nowhere because they just hadn't done it. And it's like when you've got a coach that pulls you in the huddle and he doesn't have a play drawn up and he just says, you go make a play. You're my guy. Go get me the ball. Defense, go get a turnover, whatever. And for once, the Browns huddled up and Dansby went out there and made a play when you didn't expect it. But the fact that they hadn't gotten pressure up until that point, I think was what surprised me when he blew through. And I popped big for that. Speaking of, real quick, I want to give kudos. That was his 39th career sack, first one as a member of the Browns for Dansby. He is the only active NFL player with 30 or more sacks and 10 or more career interceptions. So there's an interesting plateau there. I think some people underrated what Dansby was when he came in, and even I wasn't sure if you were going to see the before I got paid or after I got paid version of Dansby.
Yeah, that's true. And the one thing that he's showing me that I didn't know about, or I didn't know enough about him as a player to expect from him, is the speed. I saw him as a bigger guy, as a run stuffer. I didn't expect the agility and the speed that I'm seeing. That's a pleasant surprise to me, watching him play on the field for a couple games. And then I think on top of that, what we know about Rance and veterans stepping up, I see him as an emotional leader. He's vocal and he's demonstrative on the field, and it's obviously stuff that this team desperately needs is veteran leadership and people who aren't going to stand for losing. So all that stuff has been a pleasant surprise. I just couldn't be more happy with what I've seen from him so far.
And here's a thing to keep in mind going forward this season is, and I love these guys that I'm about to mention. They were always great and personable and great to talk to and decent on the field too. But we talked about the voice in the locker room when you let DeQuell Jackson walk and you move TJ Ward. These guys that were those voices in the locker room for the last few years, no offense, because I don't necessarily live in the what have you done for me today world. I do believe that you still respect people's past accomplishments more than the NFL tends to do. I do. I don't want to give too much to the past either, but I believe that they move on what have you done for me lately too quickly. But when the guys in the locker room are saying, come on guys, we got to pull out of it. We're going to win this game in the second half, and And the guys telling you that have gone 4-12 every season of their career. It's a lot of empty rhetoric after season of the same old crap coming from the same old guys, even though they mean every word of what they say and they're good leaders and they're good professional athletes. Not just when you bring guys in, like, because Hoyer didn't have a pedigree, little bit of success. Whitner, a successful background and, some championship pedigree. But when you need a third down stop, and Dansby blows through and gets the sack. When Brian Hoyer has now led 2 times within 2 minutes, comeback game-winning drives. Now, when Dansby and Whitner and Hoyer in the locker room at halftime or on the sideline tell you we can do it, they didn't just do it before they came to Cleveland, but they've done it and they've told you, and it makes your words more tangible in the locker room. All of a sudden, you believe you can come back from a 20-25 point deficit like in Pittsburgh. I'm just saying that changing the voice sometimes is effective, especially when they don't just talk it, but they back it up. For so long, the Browns have been full of locker room guys that talk good games, but their record speaks for itself. No offense to anybody I mentioned.
Yeah, I think here was a big part of what John McMullen was talking about today. With you can mouth the words, but if you don't have any credibility behind it, people aren't going to listen to you. They're going to hold true for that locker room pep talk type of stuff that you're talking about. These guys have some credibility. They're on some losing teams too, but
right.
coming from Frisco and has been to the Pro Bowl, and I just like the fact that these guys have bought in. These guys have bought it, and they're feeding it on to. I thought that was a big part of it. Dansby was a lot, not just after the game, but a lot. I was talking about him after the game. During the game, he's into it, and he's emotional, and that is infectious.
Absolutely, and we talk about baby steps. Like I said at the beginning of the show, you don't go from the perpetual losing that the Browns did. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that a team doesn't turn around in the NFL in one season. From time to time it does, but a lot of times those are short-lived. That team will turn around and have a burst of a 10-11 win season, but then on signing some free agents and some different thing. Point is that, just like we talked about with the Tigers, you go from winning 4 games to winning potentially 8 or, maybe 9, 10, whatever by the time it wraps up. It's still from a team that rolled you under the sidewalk the season before. That's the next step to being competitive. And then you go from that level to you want to steamroll them next season. And it took the transition. Same thing here. The transition, the team improve. Even when you take steps back and improve games, when you take each week, this week is going to be that. Now you've proven this week you can win a game you weren't supposed to win at home. You can win a home opener. All of these things you never did before. That's great. Now people are saying, well, prove it to me again. Do it, see what you do against Baltimore. So it's a test. Whether they win or lose, it's a test to see now, how do you bounce back? How do you handle success? Do you come back even hungrier next week? Or a lot of Browns teams, we watch them lay on their laurels. They'll win a good game, lay on their laurels. Hey, that was a good victory. And then they'll come out and just live in the next week like they're a completely different team. So I think the next test for this team is to show us, hey, are you going to show up again next week? Again next week? That'll be very interesting. Again next week? That'll be very interesting.
One thing that we do know for sure is one thing that we do know that same crazy loud crowd. Crazy loud crowd. Lusting for some raisin feathers.
They're coming.
Show up next week. I mean, we know that it's going to be a loud, crazy, packed house next week, and so no matter how the Browns play, at least you know that those folks are going to show up again, and we're going to be right back there where we were yesterday, making just as much noise. And that is and goes a long way to being the Baltimore Ravens next week, because we know the crowd next week is a factor in the big one crowd.
And I love how people credit that in this case. I love how they'll talk about how this 12's up in Seattle and how the Saints are a completely different team in one place than they are in another. And that's where that comes from. And it takes winning, not just beating the Saints, it takes winning and beating the Ravens and punching them back in the mouth. And even if you lose the game, punching them back in the mouth and being hard-fought football, you've got to do that week in and week out. And you can create that. I know